Joining me now on the line, Abhijit Banerjee, one of the other co-winners of this year's Nobel Prize for Economics. Professor Banerjee, firstly, from one Banerjee to another, congratulations to you and your colleagues on your joint win.
Thank you.
All right, let's just talk about this award now that it's out of the box. Now, you and your colleagues have been awarded for a, quote, experimental approach to alleviating global poverty. What approach is that? Can you explain it to lesser mortals such as myself?
So I think the way policy is often done is somebody thinks this must be a good idea. That's often a reflection of some piece of theoretical economic thinking or theoretical political thinking, something that hasn't particularly had any grounding in the very specifics of reality. And so, you do policy, you sort of feel this makes sense, that's intuitive, and then sadly, half of those don't work, or maybe more than half of those don't work. And then we say that policy doesn't work. There's a general reaction against, well, it's impossible to do anything. In fact, we just are doing things badly. We should be trying to kind of figure out, not whether it works in our head, but whether it works in people's lives. And often we just miss facts about people's lives, and therefore we get it wrong. So I think the great advantage of the experimental approach is that if you want a policy to be tested, you really test it using an experiment. You give it, it's just like a medical trial, but on a vast scale. So you give it to 50,000 people and not give it to 50,000 people, and you see if the 50,000 people or the 600 villages that got the new policy, if they end up in any way different from the ones that didn't. That's
right.
And then basically that has the advantage that it gives you a pretty reliable answer.
So I suppose what you're doing is taking out the guesswork, if I can put it crudely like that, into economic forecasting or planning for the future. But a lot of what you are suggesting, Professor Banerjee, appears to be something that needs to happen at a policy level. I wonder if there are elements of your research that individuals can use to help those who are less fortunate than themselves.
Well, one of the institutions that we helped build is the Abdul Latif Jameel Poverty Action Lab. One of the major responsibilities of the lab is to aggregate what's known about what works and what doesn't, and put it out there. And we have a fairly active web presence, and we tweet. So all kinds of standard ways we try to put out the results that have been generated by our researchers. And we have about 400 researchers who in one form or the other work with us. And so there's actually quite a lot of kind of effective outcomes that are getting tested. So it's a sort of an attempt to kind of provide that information. So if the man in the street wants to do something about, let's say, healthcare, there's a bunch of stuff there which says, this is probably something that has worked in a number of randomized controlled trials. This has not really worked very much. So it's not that is not always dispositive. People say, well, but I really need to make that part work, and even if you don't have evidence, I'm going to go that way. But at least it's a resource that's kind of available, and you can make your choice knowing what you are getting into.
Now, Professor, you and your colleagues have done a lot of work in Asia, especially India, a number of states in India. Have you found any common set of factors across the country or across the entire Asian region that need to be addressed to overcome poverty?
Actually, I think most of our work suggests that lots of things across many poor countries have fairly similar causes and fairly similar effects. I wouldn't even restrict it to Asia. Or we've looked at, for example, one example I often give is the example of pricing of health goods. So if you want people to do something healthy for themselves and their family, you want the water to be chlorinated, or the child to sleep under a insecticide infused bed net. The right way to do that is to make that good free, more or less, and
Right.
it really does, or at least get the price down really close to zero. Sometimes even to get people immunized, we've suggested, give them a small reward and you get immunization. So, and that's something that we've done in India. We've done it in all kinds of countries in Africa, even some in Latin America. So it's a kind of a recurring fact that you price the good close to the market price and nobody buys it, and therefore we get no benefits from it.
Right. Professor Banerjee, you were born in India and spent a considerable part of your life there, including in Delhi and Kolkata, two cities I myself have ties to. I wonder if your experiences in India shape your view of how the problem of poverty should be tackled.
Well, in one very specific way, yes. I mean, I grew up at the edge of a very large slum, and when you do that, you learn a healthy respect for the acumen, the energy, the general willingness to do new things of people who are very, very poor, and that it's not that they lack the sort of some kind of core human capital to do that. It's just that they don't have education, they don't have money, they don't have the time to sit and think. The pressures are from all sides. So you learn. I think one of the things that's been very influential in my life is I've never believed that poor people are uninteresting, that they are kind of like little robots who if you press a button they'll move this way or that. And growing up among them, playing with them, every day basically, gives you that confidence.
Lastly, Professor Banerjee, now you are going to be held up as an example of success and someone to emulate in India particularly for many years to come, in fact, forever. I know from my own experiences growing up in India that there was always a constant warning and a refrain from people around that if you don't study or go to the best universities, you don't have a future, you're not going to be successful. Now, you have certainly gone to the best universities in India and the US. What would you advise young people listening to our interview? Is success only guaranteed if you attend top educational institutes and are a fantastic student?
No, and I don't think I was a fantastic student in middle school. I was certainly a very mediocre student. I think that it's very important that parents let kids discover what they're good at. I think there's this pitchforking of everybody into IIT and the medical schools, and if you don't get into the IIT, you go to some little less good medical school. I think we need to find a more diverse package for the talented students. Talent is, I think we often end up with people who would have been an amazing poet, but they end up at IIT. I really think that one of the things that I think we were really not encouraged to do is deviate from that beaten path. And I think it's useful to deviate.
Abhijit Banerjee, 2019 Nobel Prize winner in economics, joint winner in economics. Thank you very much, sir, for speaking to us.
Thank you.